I'm Heather from Here Booktubes, and today is my September reading wrap-up. In the month of September, I read 23 books. I DNF'd 2 of them. Those were actually both in the last week of September. And so I'm going to talk about 21 today. A good portion of these are manga. I am trying to get through the large amount of manga that Izzy from Happy For Now sent to me. So you can expect a good amount of manga here in September and then also in October, and then next to no manga for a little while after that. So a good amount of it is that, just so you know. As always, we're going to go in chronological order, and the first one was a real highlight of my reading month, and that is Paladin's Strength, which is Saint of Steel #2 by Kingfisher. I gave this 5 stars. I read this whole series, which is 3 books. I absolutely loved it. I loved her writing. I loved the characters, the storylines, the plot, even the like creepy factors, all of it. So this one was lovely. First of all, you have older main characters. They're like late 30s, early 40s. We are following a nun who is over 6 feet tall, and she is very solid and is used to being larger than most people, and the paladin who is larger than she is. And so they are 2 people who are going through life, and they're bigger than everything is made for them. And she meets him on the very first page through circumstances that I won't tell you. She has to travel with him, right? And she is trying to rescue the rest of the nuns who were taken from their convent, and he of course is a paladin, and he is doing his job, and that is being a bodyguard, a guard for a caravan, and they, you know, throw in their lot together. I loved everything about them. I definitely teared up in this one. It's slow burn. It's so much more slow burn than I usually enjoy. And yeah, I love every moment of it. And it is that type of slow burn where, yes, it's taking them forever to actually admit their feelings, but that doesn't mean that they're not flirting and not having banter and not, you know, being like, oh, why would you say such a dumb thing in their heads? And so their interactions are frequent. And so the fact that it's taking them forever to actually seal the deal doesn't bother me, because it's not completely dumb angst. It's like natural angst, and it's really enjoyable. They are trying to solve like this creepy paranormal murder mystery thing, and there were some very creepy parts, but overall it was just sweet and emotional, and just, I love them. This is just like the perfect fantasy romance, especially for an author that I would say is not a romance author, but is a fantasy author. So I guess expect more of that than like super steamy. There are some steamy scenes, but I wouldn't advertise this as steamy romance, but it's a very lovely fantasy romance. Then I read Ruby Fever, which is Hidden Legacy #6 by Ilona Andrews. I gave this 5 stars. I, of course, read this for the Ilona Andrews read-along, which we will be picking back up in early 2023 with another series by them. And I loved it. I thought that it was a very satisfying conclusion. It is a little less romance heavy, but that is okay. It made sense for the storyline. This is urban fantasy romance. I really recommend starting with this series. I think it's a good place to start with Ilona Andrews or with urban fantasy romance. And this is a very interesting magical world and magic system set in our world. Ilona Andrews' strength is truly their characters, their relationships, as excellent as the magic is and the action scenes, and all of that is done so incredibly well. It's really balanced out by loving their characters and wanting their characters to be okay and caring about their relationships, and they just have a real knack for it. Then I read Our Teachers Are Dating Volume 4. I gave this 5 stars. This is the final book in Our Teachers Are Dating, which is a steamy sapphic manga that is very slice of life. There's no real plot. It's just following them. They're dating. They actually get married in this one. It was just super duper cute. Really, really satisfying. The entire series was 5 stars for me. I do really recommend it, especially if you want a queer manga. Then I read Their Vicious Darling, which is Vicious Lost Boys #3 by Nikki and Crowe. I gave this 4 stars. This one was mostly plot, which I don't really think is their strength. So this is a dark Peter Pan wide shoes retelling that I really enjoyed. The second book is my favorite of the series. There is going to be another book. I think that if it sounds good, you should pick it up, but if you don't like it, you won't like all of it. Does that make sense? And I do think that this is the best series that I've tried. I did live show for this. There was only a couple of steamy scenes. Be aware. Then I read Primal by Jessica Gadziala. I gave this 5 stars. This is a sweet shifter novella. It starts with a primal chase, and then that's really the only primal play that you get is their initial meeting. But you have a werewolf and a human, and he's trying not to scare her off. It was a good steamy meet cute, but overall it was very much just a palate cleanser, and that's what I needed, and that's what I picked it up for, and it worked perfectly for that. Then I read Sweat and Soap Volume 6. I gave this 5 stars. This is, you know, a long running series about a couple, so we're pretty far into the relationship. There's still a lot of hiccups and things happening at this point. They're so needy. Started off with really pointless anxiety, in my opinion. Izzy did point out I'm not neurodivergent, so a lot of these things I'm just like, but why is this bothering you? Why are we still working on this? And it makes sense that it might bother them, right? But we ended up with really great communication. I was really happy with the direction that they went in, and that's why I ended up being 5 stars, even though the beginning annoyed me. If you're not familiar, he makes soaps. She works at the company. She sweats a lot and is very nervous about it, and he loves the way that she smells, and that's kind of the beginning of their relationship. Then I read Nikki the Driver, which is Underboss Insurrection number 2 by Cate Wells. I gave this 5 stars. This is a dark mafia stalker romance with a huge content warning for eating disorders, exercise disorders, just binge eating. There's a lot of thematic elements. There's a lot of on-page instances. There's a lot of stress about him finding out for her. There's just a lot of things with it, and it is very detailed on page. If you don't want to read about any of that, I would probably just recommend skipping, to be perfectly honest. It's pretty heavy on there, okay? I do think that she did a good job with it, but if it was a thing that I was purposely trying to avoid reading about, I would not want to read a book with this much of it in it. So you have an obsessive stalker hero. He's been waiting for her since like elementary school, and the boss gives her to him. You have definitely some dubious consent, some consensual non-consent. And also a really big part of the story was that our main character has a trans sister that she's really trying to protect. And of course that's not really allowed in the Mafia world. And so there's quite a bit of, you know, being in the closet, not being able to talk about, not really having to hide it and work at hiding it, right? I love that that was not an issue at all for our hero or our main character. They loved her, and you do get to see them get to a place of safety where she could be herself, and that was really sweet. That was like an unexpected, I guess, addition to the story that I did really enjoy. Then I read Paladin's Hope, which is Saint of Steel number 3 by Kingfisher. This is the final book that's out in the series as of now anyways. I gave this 5 stars. This was a male-male romance between a paladin that we've seen have night terrors in the other books and the autopsy guy, the coroner, I guess, doctor that we have also seen in the other books. So they're working together. I didn't really know what they were going to be doing because we solved the mystery kind of in the last book. But this one, someone else is killing people and they're trying to figure it out. And there's another species. They're like almost like mole people, I think. I think they're called voles or something like that. But there's a lot of prejudice against them, and that was a very interesting social commentary that we saw going on in the book. I really loved it. I thought that they were so sweet. All of the humor, all of the emotions, all the creepiness. It's just so good. And I can't wait to continue to Kingfisher's backlist, but I also don't want to finish it out. And I know that they have very different tones for some of their different books. I know they write horror. I do kind of plan on trying horror. I can't get it out of my library yet, but I have a long list of Kingfisher I want to read. And I absolutely could not control myself with this series. I read them all. Then I have Sweat and Soap Volume 7. I gave this 5 stars, and this is my favorite volume so far in the series. So it did progress. I really liked the progress that was made. I enjoyed it very much. Then I read A Curious Beginning, which is Veronica Speedwell #1 by Deanna Raybourn. I gave this 3 stars. This is a Victorian era mystery with some romance elements. I think they get together in like book 3 based on some reviews that I was reading. And her guardian dies, and then she goes and her cottage has been like ransacked, and she catches the intruder, and then this other man like rescues her. And he's like, hey, you're in danger, please come with me. And she's like, no, I'm not, but okay, free ride to London, sounds good. That man leaves her with this mysterious scarred man who is the love interest, who is an explorer. And then the man who she rode to London with is killed that night. So then they're trying to figure out who killed him. Also, the police think that the guy she was with did it, so they're trying to avoid that. The G slur is used a few times in one chapter for this, so be aware of that. Don't really have any interactions with actual Romani people, but the word is used. It was fine. I really liked the writing and I liked the characters, and I could possibly continue, but I don't really plan on it. But the plot had some issues. I was just like, this wouldn't work. This doesn't make sense. This doesn't solve your problem. That I just really could not get on board with, because I was like, this doesn't solve anything. I know you all are pretending like it does, but it doesn't. And then that was actually proven in the book, and I was like, yeah, no duh. But they still went with that. So I'm just like, I don't know, folks. It was very interesting with the current climate after the Queen's death, because you have like the Irish fighting for freedom and our main character being like, no, long live Britain. It was odd. Then I finished a book that I've been reading to my kids for bedtime, and that is Dealing with Dragons, which is The Enchanted Forest Chronicles #1 by Patricia C. Wrede. This is a 5-star. This is like my third or fourth time reading this book, but my first time reading it to my kids. This is about a princess who doesn't fit in with other princesses, doesn't enjoy being a princess, and decides to become a dragon's princess, and is very capable and all the things. There is no romance for her in this book. It does happen in the next book, I believe. And it's just, you know, her living with the dragons and saving everybody, and it's great. Then I have Queen of Nothing, which is Rene del Cartel, so like the Queen of the Cartel #1 by Santana Knox. I gave this 2 stars. I read this because I saw a TikTok and it sounded good, and it's by a Latinx author and it's about the cartel. So I was like, okay, you know, a Mexican cartel why choose book that's by an actual Latina. Great. I don't want to overstep here on the representation, but as far as I could tell, the representation was not good. You open up with, I had a grand dream, and then that's like the only time that Spanish word is used in the whole book. She gets called a fiery Latina, and there weren't really any other aspects of actual Latina culture or anything like that. Like that wasn't really present. So I wouldn't recommend it for the representation. I didn't think that that was very good. I really would not recommend it for the story. So this was too dark for me. Just flat out, if you want to know, it was too dark for me. Also, I had a lot of issues with a lot of the plot. Also, she kept using captor instead of captive. Like, she was using the wrong word for like 70% of the book, and then just like magically switched it to the correct one. And I was like, what is happening? Because it was driving me nuts. Because I was like, that's not what that word means. None of it made any sense. None of it made any sense. None of it made any sense. I was not on board. There was a lot of torture of her for no apparent reason, and also her dad tortured her like a lot to help her be strong and the head of the cartel and stuff. Well, so you're constantly flip-flopping back and forth between I can't be broken to I'm broken. He can't be broken. Oh no, he was nice to me. That's exactly how they break your mind. And it was just like, okay, your dad put you through way worse torture to literally help you to be able to not break under torture, and you're breaking under not very much, but also no, you're so strong, you're unbreakable. It was odd. It was weird. It was like the author couldn't make up their mind of what they were going to do, and the relationships didn't work, and they were the ones that were torturing her. And so then I was like, well, let me pick up the second book because it ends on this huge cliffhanger, you know? The content warning for the second book said that it's much darker than the first one, and the first one was too dark for me, and I was like, no. Also, it's like a multiple book series, and only the 2 first books are out, and the third one isn't out till next year, and it was gonna get me darker, and I was like, no. So I do not recommend. Then I read Reckless, which is Adventures in Love #3 by Aurora Rose Reynolds. I gave this 3 stars. It was all right. It's a small town romance. Nothing special, nothing terrible. That's all I have to say about that. Except there was like this whole thing where I was like, is she gonna try to act like book reviewers make a ton of money? Because they're like, oh, you can be a book influencer, and look, this person has 1 million views. There's no way that they didn't make money from that. And I'm just like, what is happening right now? And then that was like the only time that it got brought up, so I don't know what was happening there, but good luck getting your 1 million views. Then I read Forced Perspective, which is New Heights #1 by Christina C. Jones. I gave this 4 stars. This is a steamy novella. It was a rapper and a photographer. The main character really viewed the fame and the social media comments and stuff as a huge negative, as a reason why she should not be in the relationship with this person, and how it would affect her career, and people would say, you know, that she just slept with him and all of the things. And I felt like her issues were very valid and were really reasonable hang-ups to have, and why you might not want to be in a public relationship with him, because all of the things that she was worried about were, you know, accurate. Like, I just thought it made a lot of sense. I know some people probably were irritated with her, and I was like, I am right there with you. Right there with you. You better love him so much that all of this is worth it, because it's not worth it, you know? So I was really on board. Then I read Making the Match, which is River Rain #4 by Kristen Ashley. I gave this 4 stars. This is about the dad and husband from the first book. So he cheated on his wife, ended their longtime marriage, and then the wife was the main character of the first book, getting back with her childhood love, basically. So this has he's a world famous tennis player. Also, he was married to, you know, the most famous actress, basically, and all these things. And he gets involved with this really popular artist that they met years ago, but couldn't get involved because he was married, and they didn't think they could just be friends, because that's not what they wanted from each other. Well, I will say that this whole book has a content warning for kind of the Me Too movement. So none of the victims or survivors or anything were characters that we saw on page, but that was kind of the theme of the book, was they were trying to bring light to the fact some companies covering up rape and other things by their celebrity clients, and just the whole thing was kind of, you know, this is what happens. Even if you're not the person that's doing it, you will cover it up for money, and, you know, this is something that we need to handle with care. So, and they knew some of the victims and some they didn't. So say that the content warning is more Me Too rather than actual main characters going through it. It was sweet. Not my favorite in the series, but I still really enjoyed it. I read It Happened One Summer, which is Wallflowers #2 by Lisa Kleypas. I gave this 5 stars. This was enemies to lovers. You have a very stuffy Earl and a very improper American heiress who is rich, and he actually doesn't need the money, so they fall in love with that without that need for it. And the setup for the third book was wild and immaculate. Like, I want to read it so soon. I don't know. I didn't anticipate it. It went places I did not think it was going to go. And now I really want those characters' stories. So wild stuff. Won't spoil it for you, but just know if you read book 2, you're probably going to want to pick up book 3 really quickly. Then I read Yakuza Lover Volume 3. I gave this 3 stars. This is continued meh. It's wild, over the top, insta-love between a Yakuza, which is the Japanese Mafia boss, and a random college student, I think. Continues to not really work for me. Then I read Bite Maker Volume 2. I gave this 3 stars. This is Omegaverse meh. I can't tell if this is what I choose or not. Still thinking it might be. And you have alphas who don't understand boundaries. You have an omega who is pretending not to be an omega. I don't know. Then I read Something's Wrong With Us Volume 2. I gave this 4 stars. Not much happened in this one, but this is a current favorite series. I really am highly interested in it. And this is like thriller-esque. If you like romantic suspense or romantic thrillers, this might be a good manga for you. Then I have Spell of Desire Volume 2. I give this 5 stars. Right now, our main character is still a virgin. I think that we're going to get steam in the next couple of books, but she has her mother, the Witch Queen's power inside of her, and she's not good at controlling it, and he kisses her to help calm her down, and he's also like her bodyguard and is falling in love with her, and things progress with the plot as well, and I am really interested in finishing the series. There's only 5 volumes. It is a completed series. And then lastly, I read Sweat and Soap Volume 8. I gave this 4 stars. It was sweet, but the why is this a stressor continues. There was anything that really tipped it up to a 5-star for me. It was sweet so far. Volume 7 is still my favorite. So that's it. That's all the books that I read in September. Obviously a lot of manga, which is unusual for me. I only read like 12 books that were not manga or were not for my kids, which is definitely on the low side for me with that aspect. But yeah, let me know if you read any of these. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.